Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast, where we explore the mindset, skill set, and habit set of leadership communication. Using these tips, techniques, and tactics, you'll be able to talk like a leader to build better relationships and get more done. Your host is Guy Harris, who has more than 20 years of combined professional and military experience in consulting, coaching, and training in areas like team and interaction dynamics, communication strategies and tactics, as well as emotional intelligence. Take it away, Guy.
Hi, this is Guy Harris. Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast. This week's episode is titled, It's Better to Disarm Than to Strongarm. The idea for this episode came to me last week when I had a customer service issue to deal with. And in this particular case, I was the customer. Now, the background is that my wife and I are working to help my daughter and my son-in-law get a home ready for them to move into as my son-in-law is exiting the Army in the next few weeks or maybe months, depending on how the Army paperwork processing goes. But in any case, they're moving here, and we're helping them to get a house ready. Part of getting the house ready is painting the house. My daughter has picked a set of colors for the house that we had mixed at a local paint store. And we went to start doing some painting and found that the color wasn't exactly what we were expecting. It was very, very close, just not exactly what we were looking for. Or I should say, what we believed our daughter was looking for. So we took the paint back to the paint store and wanted to have a conversation with them about adjusting the color to get it closer to what we expected. As we entered the store, I wasn't really believing that anyone did anything wrong. Certainly didn't do anything intentionally wrong. I didn't believe anyone made a mistake. I just believed that this wasn't what we were looking for, that probably they had followed the formulas in their system as the formula indicates they should, and probably their equipment did exactly what they asked them to do, and probably everybody was acting in good faith and trying to deliver what we asked for, and still we wound up at a place where we didn't want to be. We had colors that were almost right, not just right. Well, I know that in order to get this fixed, we're going to have to take the paint into the store to get it fixed. They have to have the paint in their possession. Now, as I'm approaching the store and thinking about this, there are a couple things I have in my possession. I have the sample that we used initially. It was like a pint sample that was used to paint on some sample cards, some standard white sample cards that are used to paint larger than the paint chip you might get at a store, so that you can see on a 1 foot by 2 foot square area what the color looks like and get a better visualization of what it's going to look like on the wall or on the trim, as the case may be. So I had those sample cards that had been prepared by my daughter back in December when she painted the sample paint on the sample cards. Well, the selection was made based on the representation on those sample cards, and then we went into the store and purchased the paint, multiple gallons, by the way, enough for a whole house, based on those sample cards. And the paint we got didn't quite match the sample cards when applied to the wall. So I have in my possession the sample, 1 pint sample, the sample cards, and 10 gallons of paint. Now, as I'm walking in to talk with the person in the store, I recognize that this is a potential scenario for conflict. And I'm thinking as I walk in the store, what is the best way to approach this person so that we can resolve this issue rather than get into an argument? And it occurs to me that if I walk into the store carrying 10 gallons of paint, it's going to look like my intent is to return them. It has a high probability of putting the person on the defensive to start with. And now I have to dig out of a hole where I've put the person in a bit of a defensive position rather than in a helpful position. So my wife and I make the decision, let's not carry the paint in right away. Let's just carry the sample cards in and start a conversation with the person behind the counter, asking them if they can help us to resolve the discrepancy. And here's the idea. We're thinking in advance, how is our approach going to look to the other person? And that's the idea of better to disarm than to strong arm. Our goal was to get the problem solved, not make the person feel bad or defensive. And I recognize, my wife recognizes, we both recognize that if we approach this person in a way that puts them on the defensive before we even start the conversation is harder to have. We want to engage with this person in a disarming way so that we invite them to help us solve a problem rather than a confrontational way where we position ourselves, we're going to strong arm you or you're going to strong arm us. It's a confrontational approach. Are there probably some situations in life where strong arming is appropriate? I can't think of any where it's necessarily a good idea, at least not in normal situations. So I can't honestly say it's generally a good idea to try to strong arm people. I'm also not prepared to say there's never a situation where it's not appropriate. What I'm going to suggest is the better approach in most situations is to try to disarm the person, to try to approach them in a way that puts them in a helpful mindset and invites them into your world to help you resolve a problem, overcome a challenge, gain agreement, whatever the situation is. It's better to start with a disarming approach than with a strong arming approach. Better to anticipate and plan for how your approach might be perceived by the other person and try to anticipate whether that approach is likely to put them on the defensive or is likely to invite them into a conversation. And so the thing I'd like to encourage you to remember in your coaching conversations, in your change management conversations, in virtually any conversation you have as a leader, where you're trying to gain influence, where you're trying to persuade a person towards a perspective, where you're trying to invite a person to solve a problem with you, where you're trying to create a scenario where the other person takes responsibility and accountability for a problem and runs with it on their own, through their own energy and enthusiasm, rather than because you told them to. Any of these situations where you're trying to gain cooperation with another person, remember that it's better to disarm than to strong arm. Remember how the other person might perceive you and avoid doing anything that might put them on the defensive. Invite them to engage with you in a productive and collaborative conversation rather than an argumentative and a confrontational conversation. If you can practice the skill of disarming rather than strong arming, you can talk like a leader. Hi, this is Guy again. Little postscript from the main part of this podcast episode. I realized that I didn't really close the story on the paint story scenario. In the end, what happened is we got excellent customer service. We got multiple people trying to help us find a resolution to the problem. They did so enthusiastically and positively. So I think it demonstrates the idea that disarming is more powerful than strong arming. Have a great day. This has been the Talk Like a Leader podcast. You can listen to this show every week wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Guy Harris, and thanks for listening.